Now, we're going to spend the first half an hour of this show talking about the draft, and then we're going to transition over to the NBA playoffs. So, this first question on the screen here, what was our biggest surprise in the first round of the draft? And to be honest with you, I'm just going to say this out front. I thought, at least for night one, I thought the NFC East, all four teams, Giants, Commanders, Cowboys, and Eagles, all crushed the first round of the draft. Some of those picks were a little bit surprising. Caleb Downs falling to Dallas, who traded up one spot from 12 to 11. Micaiah Lemon obviously falling to 20, and Howie Roseman making the deal with the Cowboys to go get him was even surprising to yours truly. But for me, this draft was surprising all over the place. I think even starting at pick 2, because most people had Arvell Reese going to the Jets and not the other New York team, the Giants, at 5. But what really set this draft off in motion was at number 4, when the Tennessee Titans, who everybody thought with Sonny Sayo still on the board, Arvell Reese, even Caleb Downs, they got to go defense, right? Jeremiah Love's off the board of the Arizona Cardinals. They go wide receiver Carnell Tate at number 4. Who I like Carnell Tate. I think he's going to be a very good player. But Tennessee, you don't even have a defense. You don't have an offensive line. Is Cam Ward going to even be able to get the ball to Carnell Tate?
It's like that Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase meme that we've seen going around. You know what I'm talking about?
It is, and I understand it. But I also think Joe Burrow going in was a lot better prospect. And I think Jamar Chase is a lot better prospect than Carnell Tate. Not saying Carnell Tate's not going to be a bad receiver, because I think he's going to be good. But Jamar Chase is literally the best wide receiver in football. Carnell Tate was actually viewed, out of all these Ohio State receivers that have came out the last few years, as the worst one of them all.
So, obviously, the biggest talking point coming out of round 1 was the LA Rams taking Ty Simpson, number 13 overall. But to me, that was not the biggest surprise of the first round. It was at number 3 with the Arizona Cardinals going with Jeremiah Love, because we heard all these rumors that they were looking to trade out and that the Saints were going to move up and other teams might be interested in moving up. And instead of going defense, they go with Jeremiah Love. I get it. Like, he's a really good running back. But are they trying to replicate what the Las Vegas Raiders did last year? Because Ashton Genty was their first round pick last year, and he really did nothing for them.
Correct. I do think Arizona has a little bit of a better offensive line going in. I think Arizona has an offensive coach now with Michael Ford. That will help. They also have Marvin Harrison, Michael Wilson, Trey McBride at tight end. So they got real pieces down there. We'll talk about the third round pick they made. Obviously, the Georgia Miami quarterback Carson Beck. Like, Arizona for a fourth place team in the division is not that bad. And I think they looked at it like this. We have Buda Baker. We have Walter Nolan. We have Will Johnson. We have Josh Sweat. We have some names in our defense, which the Raiders outside of Max Crosby last year did not have. James Conner's been hurt a lot. We're going to go with a young quarterback. Why not give him the best weapon available?
Yeah, but they did bring Tyler Algier to be their lead back, at least presumably.
And well, are you sure Tyler Algier's never been a lead back in the NFL?
Yeah, because he was in Atlanta with Bijan. And I think he signed with Arizona thinking he was going to be the lead back for the Cardinals.
Well, he is obviously wrong, because I would bet a lot of money that Jeremiah Love and James Conner and Tyler Algier will all share carries. That's the way the majority of teams are doing it now, is the running back by committee, even if you do have a lead back. I mean, even us in Philadelphia last year, Saquon Barkley was our lead back, but Tank's Bigby still got a lot of run, especially late in games down the stretch.
Yeah. Actually, you're talking about the Titans picking Carnell Tate being a surprise. It actually wasn't that surprising for me. I really liked that pick for them. Yes, they need help.
Really?
Yes. Because now Calvin Ridley doesn't need to be that number one wide receiver anymore. He's not a number one. He can settle into being the number two.
I would argue at this point in his career, he's not even a number 3. I would argue that's my argument. I don't think Calvin Ridley can separate anymore. I mean, did Tennessee even have a 500-yard receiver last year?
I don't think so.
Maybe Westbrook Akide, maybe. And they got Tony Pollard and Brian Dable was there, and they bring in Wan'Dale Robinson. They got pieces. The problem I have for them is they literally do not have anybody in the offensive line or defense that I can name besides Jeffrey Simmons.
See, that's the part where I agree with you. But I liked what we saw from Cam Ward later in the season, not early, and I like what they have with Robert Saleh as their head coach. I'm actually high on the Titans this season.
Can I ask you, what did you see out of Cam Ward? Because all I saw was a guy on his back. I couldn't evaluate him at all.
Later in the season, I felt like he did a better job of escaping the pocket, making throws on the run. Yes, I agree with you. He was on his back a lot during the season. I'm not saying you're wrong by any stretch, but I felt like as the season went on, he did a better job of getting the ball out quick and escaping the pocket.
I guess here's my problem. He's going to go up against that Texans defense, the Colts, who were really good until Daniel Jones got hurt last year, and we know what the Jaguars did, which the Jags might have had the worst draft I've seen a team have in 5 years, and yet I feel like they're fine because all they did was draft for depth.
And like I said, the biggest talking point coming out of the first round was the Rams drafting Ty Simpson 13th overall, which I understand because they were right there. You know, you and I asked the question the week of the NFC Championship, was that the Super Bowl between the Rams and the Seahawks? And looking back, I feel like I can definitively say yes, because that was the way better game. And the Rams were just a play here or a play there away from winning the Super Bowl, because they would have totally smashed the Patriots in the Super Bowl. So I was a little surprised they didn't go out and get a receiver to go alongside Puka and Devontae. I would have loved for them to get Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end out of Oregon. I talked about that on our show last week. I thought they could pick up somebody defensively. You know, they're trying to remake their back end. They went out and traded for Trent McDuffie, but that's not enough.
They also had a Jalen Watson, I believe, the other corner from Kansas City.
Yes. By the way, I thought Kansas City got a steal trading up, I think because they expected Washington to take Mansour Delane. But like you just said, Kansas City lost both their corners. And when you're facing Bo Nix, when healthy, Fernando Mendoza, Justin Herbert, you need a strong back end.
Yeah, I know Fitz, and I got to give Fitz credit for this, because on our show last week, friend of the show, Sean Fitzgerald, did call the Rams were going to draft Ty Simpson. And he was obviously right on that. My takeaway is, I get it from both sides. I get the idea of, hey, listen, we want to try to find our new franchise quarterback when Matthew Stafford eventually retires. I'll be the first on record to say Ty Simpson wasn't my favorite quarterback. He reminds me a little bit of Jordan Love, who out of Utah State in 2020, if you remember when the Packers drafted him, he was very raw. He lost to my Kent State Golden Flashes in a bowl game earlier that December. But Green Bay, to their point, said, no, we're going to develop him. And 3 seasons later, Jordan Love, I know we've had conversations about his contract, but he's definitively an above-average quarterback, and that's all you can ask for. The Rams are obviously hoping for that with Ty Simpson. On the Kansas City front, trading up 3 spots and giving up an additional third round pick, on the surface for a corner might be too much, but it might be a home run. If Mansour Dallaire is a Jalen Ramsey-esque, Darrelle Revis-esque shutdown corner, it will absolutely be worth it for the Chiefs, who I argued going into the entire draft, they're going to draft defense, they're not going to draft offense. But if, this guy goes 4 years and he's a good corner, but he's not great, and they don't re-sign him, then to me it's not worth it, because this is a draft pick that you're not going to presumably have years down the road. So you have to hit on the pick.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. And it sounds like the Browns were going to draft the offensive lineman out of Utah if they had stayed at number 6. I don't think they.
But by the way, we can get into the Browns a little bit, because since you brought it up, I'm going to ask you. It sounds like at 24, if Ty Simpson was still there, speaking of Ty Simpson, that would have been the pick for the Browns.
Maybe. But I liked our first 3 picks, really, especially Denzel Boston out of Washington, because he can be that big physical wide receiver that the Browns have been missing. I've been saying it since we lost Jarvis Landry. The Cleveland Browns have not had a definitive number 1 wide receiver since Jarvis Landry. I don't care what the statistics say. Amari Cooper, to me, was not a number 1 wide receiver.
I don't even think Jarvis Landry was a number 1 wide receiver. I think the last time you truly had a number 1 wide receiver was 2013 Josh Gordon.
Fair.
You can make a case for 2019 Odell Beckham, because he, like it or not, even in that disastrous season, he did put up good numbers. And I'm not sure. Josh, are you still there? Not totally sure what happened here, but I will say this on the front of the Browns draft, that I thought, to Josh's point, Trey Boston, and I thought ENW, Emmanuel Nikhil Warren, was the steal of the draft at safety. They traded up 10 spots, might have been 52, 54, somewhere around there to go get him. I wanted my Eagles to get him in the second round. I don't understand why he dropped there you are, back to the first round. But I did not understand the first round picks. Spencer Fano, I like. He's okay. He's not great. A lot of people say Lando, the guy the Patriots traded down to Washington later on in the first round, was better. I thought Monroe Freewing was a better tackle out of Georgia. But if he works out, he works out. I did not like the KC Conception pick at all. Especially,
that pick didn't make a lot of sense to me. Like I said, I loved the Denzel Boston pick. It felt like the Browns did this draft to help Shedeur Sanders. It really did.
I completely disagree. It felt like to me they did this draft because they're moving on from Shedeur Sanders.
The interesting pick, sorry about that, I had to step away. I had to take care of something with one of my dogs. But anyway, with the Browns, I liked at least the first 4 picks. You need to help the offensive line. We're going to have a whole new offensive line in 2026. Getting wide receiver help is always good.
If you ask me, Casey Concepcion's a punt returner. He's not going to be an NFL wide receiver. He reminds me a lot of a guy my Eagles actually drafted in 2020 who was a complete bust in Jalen Reagor. He can't separate, and he can't catch.
If we use him as a kick returner, I think that's a waste of a pick, of a first-round pick.
That's exactly my point, because they're going to try to use him as a wide receiver, and you know what his problem was in college, Josh? He couldn't catch. He had drop issues.
Well, for some reason, they saw him as a first-round pick, so they did it.
I had Trey Boston ranked ahead of him on my board, so I thought they stole Trey Boston in the second round.
Yeah, Trey Boston. For some reason, I thought his first name was Denzel. I have no idea why. But anyway, I also liked the corner they got out of Toledo.
He's a safety. I thought he was a safety in the
my
draft.
bad.
And I thought they stole him in the second round. I thought that was a steal of the draft. So kudos to Andrew Berry, because I was banging the table at about 50 for Howie Roseman to go up and get him, because I wanted to pair him with Quinyon Mitchell. In our Voltage Live mock draft, I had him as a first-round pick. I had him going before Daniel Thiemann, who ended up going to Chicago at 27.
Yeah, 25. I had Daniel Thiemann going to the Carolina Panthers, I believe.
And for whatever reason, I still don't know why ENW dropped to the second round. Just like I thought, and I know you had this guy going in the top 5, Jared McCoy, the corner out of Tennessee, falling because of a knee injury all the way to the 4th round of the Las Vegas Raiders. If I'm the Raiders who don't have a secondary, hell yeah, take a shot on the kid.
Yeah, I thought by the way, the wide receiver out of Washington, his name is Denzel Boston. I just looked it up.
My apologies.
No, you're fine. But no, with the most confusing pick for the Browns, though, was the quarterback out of Arkansas.
See, my takeaway is they're doing that because they're moving on from Shedeur Sanders.
But I don't think that's the case. And yet the Browns have said, we're not trading Dylan Gabriel. What?
I think here's why. Can I tell you why? They spent a 3rd-round pick on Dylan Gabriel, and they spent a 5th-round pick on Shedeur Sanders. And as we talked about in last year's draft, who's more valuable? The 3rd-round pick, which is why we both said if they would have just flipped spots, everybody would have been okay with it. There's nothing wrong with taking 2 quarterbacks in the draft. It's where you took those quarterbacks.
Yeah. But I mean, honestly, I get what you're saying, but it didn't feel like this draft was, we're moving on from Shedeur. It felt like.
See, my takeaway is Shedeur and Deshaun Watson are going to battle for QB1, and the loser is getting traded or cut.
That's.
And they're going to keep Dylan Gabriel as well as Taylor Green, and they're going to develop those guys for developmental picks, and then they're really going to go to their quarterback next year when they go 0-17 and try to get Arch Manning.
Good Lord. Yeah, the Browns are an interesting case, but your Eagles are also interesting because if the AJ Brown stuff hadn't already been confirmed, I believe we got a definitive answer when the Pittsburgh Steelers tried to call Mekhi Lemon, and then the Eagles swooped in. That was one of the craziest things I have ever seen. He's on the phone with Omer Khan of the Steelers, and then he goes, wait, why is Philly calling?
So before the draft, what did I say? I said I would not draft a wide receiver because you're going to give up all leverage for A.J. Brown. But that was because I didn't realize that Mekhi Lemon was still going to be on the board. And you better absolutely believe when Howie Roseman traded up with Jerry Jones, of all people, my first thought was, are they taking a receiver? Because the Cowboys don't need a receiver. And there's no way Jerry Jones would have made that trade the same way they made it when he acquired the Eagles got Devontae Smith. The Cowboys ended up moving back 2 spots and get Micah Parsons. The ironic thing is Dallas uses that second first-round pick they got for the Micah Parsons trade to move back with my Eagles so they could go get a guy who I owe punch Jerry Jones for the next decade. Mekhi Lemon and Devontae Smith on one side. And let me just add this, by the way. I love the tight end they took in the second round, who's going to be an eventual Dallas Goedert replacement, Eli Stowers out of Vanderbilt. He looks just like Dallas Goedert. And very similar to what they did when they had Zach Ertz, when they drafted Dallas Goedert in the second round of the 2018 draft. And then Howie Roseman goes out about the third round and trades away his compensatory pick, number 98 overall, and a third round pick next year for a proven pass rusher in Jonathan Gennard, who is now going to pair up with the likes of Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Jaywick's Hunt along that edge. And Howie Roseman's trying to get back to what they had in the Super Bowl year 2 years ago, which is an A wave and a B wave of pass rushers.
Yeah. Why teams continue to trade with Howie Roseman, I have no idea.
I have no idea. It's a gift. Thank you very much. By the way, one quick note on the A.J. Brown thing, because I agree with you. I think he's going to be a Patriot June 1st. I really do. The problem is A.J. Brown going to change his mind because his potential new head coach is going to therapy?
Yeah, I don't want to really address that whole situation. No, thank you.
Listen, it's got to be something you talk about. Now I'm hearing rumors out there that potentially Vrabel could be stepping down to the Patriots head coach if this thing goes any further. Like when they called the press conference on Thursday night, right before the draft, I thought nobody does this. Is he resigning? And then I thought to myself, wait, are we going to get a wide receiver and keep A.J. Brown?
I don't know. A lot of people are saying, back to the Browns, a lot of people are saying we had one of the best drafts of anybody in the league. And I'm like, that's great, but this is the Cleveland Browns we're talking about here.
Yeah, a lot of people to me really like Casey Concepcion. I don't. That's what it comes down to. I did not think the Browns had a good first night. I think Spencer Fano's a good tackle. I want him to be elite, but he was like the third or fourth best tackle on the board, and he was the first one chosen.
The Browns don't always do what.
Well, you get if they would have taken Monroe Freewing out of Georgia, who the Panthers took, and I thought the Panthers had an A+ draft. I thought they had everything. So they're obviously trying to give Bryce Young more pieces, but I'll be honest with you, there was only really 2 or 3 teams drafted that I did not like. Sorry, I clicked on the wrong topic bar there. One of them being Tennessee's. I already talked about it with Carnell Tate. One of them being San Francisco's. I did not understand what the Niners did at all. They drafted a wide receiver at the top of the second round, which they really don't need. They drafted an edge rusher. They drafted a running back, which they really don't need. It was like they were reaching for players instead of picking up positions that they actually need. And the other one I didn't understand was Miami, because they take the guy, Kalen Proctor, who even Nick Saban throws a shot at, saying he doesn't want football. And they take a corner in the first round out of San Diego State, who was mocked to go to the second round. They did take the linebacker in the second round. I believe he's out of Notre Dame. I could be wrong, forgetting his name off the top of my head. But he won the award for best linebacker in college football last year, which I always like. But Kyle Lemon won the Biletnikoff Award for wide receiver as well.
Right.
I don't know. Back-to-back years, Grandizer is going to be mad at me. I don't understand the direction the Dolphins were going. It was like they picked random players and said, we're rebuilding anyways. Let's see who can play and who can't.
I don't think Miami even drafted a quarterback.
They did not. I believe you're right on that. So they're going to go forward with Malik Willis, obviously.
Yep. I also didn't understand Buffalo's draft at all. What did they trade down, like twice in the first round, I believe it was?
They traded down 3 times. And my takeaway from that was we're trading down because we're going to take shots in the dark on defense because we need defense.
Yeah. I would have liked for them to get something in terms of wide receiver because they don't really have anything in terms of wide receiver, at least in my opinion. Like, Keon Coleman is okay. Khalil Shakir, okay.
They did take a receiver in the 4th round that they took Skylar Bell.
Okay. By the way, I will say I agree with you for the most part with the Dolphins. I did like their selection of Chris Bell, the wide receiver out of Louisville. I thought that was a good pick
I heard
for
he's
them.
a really good player. I did hear that. That was good value for them. I believe that was a 4th-round pick.
I thought it was like 2nd or 3rd.
Could have been 3rd. You could be right on that.
But no, with Buffalo, Buffalo was the team that really made no sense. I would have liked to have seen them get some more offensive line help to protect Josh Allen, maybe get another wide receiver to help that group. And like you said, they really just took a lot of shots in the dark in terms of defense. It didn't feel like they had a definitive strategy to me.
Can I argue that they have an offensive-minded coach, so they said, okay, you're going to fix the offense now, and we're just going to draft defense and hope some of these kids can hit? And they didn't have a 2nd-round pick because of the DJ Moore trade.
True.
So they got 2 of them, I believe, because they traded back in the 1st round, which I thought was probably the best move of the night, because most experts said once you got, and obviously Micaiah Woman fell, but like the Tennessee kid that they drafted, they traded up for the edge rusher out of Auburn. He was projected to go in the middle of the 2nd round.
Yeah.
The other thing, too, did you notice the smart GMs in this league? The Eagles, the Chiefs, those are the teams, even the Jets. I got to give the Jets credit because they got 2 tremendous weapons on offense, plus David Bailey is a pure pass rusher. Most teams in the 1st round traded up, and most of those teams gave up day 3 picks. I think New England in the 2nd round moved up and gave away like 2 4th-round picks to the Chargers. Because by the time you got to the 4th or 5th round in this draft, you didn't know who the hell you were drafting.
Yeah. It really made the confusing thing was we think the Jets are going to go with a quarterback next year based on the draft class, and yet they went and selected Cade Klubnik in like the 4th or 3rd round, something like that.
Hey, listen, Geno Smith's not your answer. Why not try with Cade Klubnik? I'm not saying he's going to start right away, which then leads us to this question of which QB will be the first to start. I think at some point, all of these guys that were drafted, at least in the rounds 1 through 4, are going to play, besides maybe Drew Adler. Obviously, it depends on what Pittsburgh does with Aaron Rodgers. But I fully believe Tom Brady that he does want Fernando Mendoza to sit. And we have not seen a quarterback sit a full year since Mahomes sat behind Alex Smith. And obviously, he did play that one meaningless game in Denver, week 17, but it was a meaningless game because Kansas City already had the number 1 seed that year, or it might have been the number 2, because that was back when there was 2 buys. But Josh, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities Fernando Mendoza does not sit the entire first year. And I do think the first quarterback that's going to get a shot to start, and in my opinion, it may be week 1, is going to be Carson Beck. Because I think the Cardinals' takeaway is Jacoby Brissett wants a contract extension. They're not going to want to give him. We already know who Gardner Minshew is. I think Mike LaFleur sees himself like his brother Matt in Green Bay as a quarterback developer, and I think this kid is going to play this year.
I would agree with you. I do think there's a chance Drew Aller plays. Because of what you said, we don't know the situation with Pittsburgh. I also think, even though he was drafted in the 7th round and he's behind Justin Fields, we don't know if Patrick Mahomes is going to be healthy in time for week 1. We don't know that. So
I would agree. Though my takeaway is Garrett Nussmeier, the only way he would here is if, Mahomes doesn't come back right away and Justin Fields gets hurt. I think they really saw it as like, we could develop this kid and maybe use him as trade bait down the line. If, again, the draft is all these weird stories. I mean, McCoy drops because of a knee. Nobody knows why ENW dropped. Garrett Nussmeier reportedly dropped because of a back injury. And when these guys get red flags up, it feels like NFL teams get very scared to take them.
Yeah, Diego Pavia was the runner-up for the Heisman, and he didn't get drafted.
And yet signs a 3-year deal with Baltimore, which seemed very strange to me that it was that long of a contract.
Yeah, I didn't understand that at all. I
By the
thought
way,
for sure. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say another weird thing is, too, my Eagles took an edge rusher that has never played football before.
Didn't the Eagles also draft a quarterback?
They did. He's a developmental guy. He's a left-handed guy out of North Dakota State in the 5th round. He is going to compete for the number 3, I would imagine, with Andy Dalton and Tanner McKee. And I think between Andy Dalton and that kid, if that kid beats out Andy Dalton would end up being traded. My takeaway is they drafted him just in case they do trade Tanner McKee.
Fair enough. Didn't your Eagles also draft Kyle McCord out of Syracuse last year?
And they cut him. He never made the team.
Okay.
So, again, it goes back to not everybody is going to make the team. I remember at Kansas City, they drafted my guy Dustin Crum out of Kent State, or maybe he was one of the first undrafted guys. He didn't make the club either, and he set a record for passing yards at Kent State.
Yeah, the draft is weird in that regard.